We are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today, again, it's Kevin. Y'all already know. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. You know, it's a nice Sunday morning over here, and Joel Farabee has a new extension. I'm just going to dive right in.
Oh, I thought we were going with that. Is that it is a nice Sunday morning, and we're doing this the day after remembering a very important day
That's true.
in the country's history, where we should all be thankful for just life and remembering how fragile it is. So,
yeah, absolutely.
not to start it off on that kind of a note, but you know what I mean. Like it didn't feel like 20 years, did it?
No, because I was in third grade.
Well, I hear you, and I'm right there with you. I was in fourth at the time.
Right.
So, like, I'm right there with you, but you get the point. Like, that's more than basically about 2/3 of our life that we remembered this, and I know it's stuck with me all that time. So.
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
Everybody.
Let's pop up this graphic here.
Yeah, nice, just nice smooth transition. It's okay. Joel Farabee, 6-year extension. He's going to be a Flyer for a very long time.
Yeah. Kind of out of left field, I thought, a little bit, because
Me too.
Just because I didn't really think. Let's this way. I thought the Couturier extension was a little bit unexpected, just in terms of trying to get to work, I suppose. I mean, I thought that they had done so much work now for this upcoming season that you weren't thinking about the following season. Why would you? You know,
right.
Like you kind of almost. And I think I said on the last show, a lot of these 1-year deals to me were wait and see how this works, and then we'll move forward and decide from there. And I don't think that they were ever going to consider the idea of trading Sean Couturier if he was on an expiring contract and they weren't doing as well, or things like that. Like I think that they still based their future success around him.
They wanted him to re-sign for sure.
I just didn't think they were going. I thought that they were going to tell everybody, we're not thinking about anything beyond this current year until the end of the season. I thought that's where they were going with it. And as much as I was not surprised that if anybody got an extension, it was Couturier first, because if you were going to address anybody who was on that list, that was the guy to do. I just didn't think they were going to go through all of that. And then on top of that, to do Joel Farabee now and give him an extension. I mean, I'm not surprised in the slightest that they like him a lot. I've liked him since, he was my guy that I thought they should pick in that draft anyway. So, and it's hard to argue with a guy who in his second year takes that step further, and in the year where everything else went wrong. Everything else that could possibly go wrong did go wrong, except for him.
Right, and even, by the way, even with how transparent Chuck Fletcher was about Claude Giroux, like the fact that they want him to re-sign, and they have kind of multiple deals kind of hanging around, and they're just kind of waiting to see how the season plays out. But it's interesting to see that Chuck Fletcher is willing to stick with Sean Couturier, Joel Farabee, and again, Claude Giroux. But yeah, back to Farabee, because it's his day here.
Sure.
We talked about the Sean Couturier extension and how he's probably going to still be underpaid.
I mean, down the road, it could be that way for sure. I mean,
right.
The thing you're banking on is it's the Konechny deal all over again. You're sitting here, and the only difference with this deal from the Konechny deal is that it doesn't kick in right away. You actually have another year to get there. So what you're already doing is that's the only thing that you should be worried about, honestly, is you need to now see him repeat last season, this season, while he's still making entry-level money.
Right.
And then go to the $5 million a year that he's going to make on this 6-year extension and go, okay,
this starts to become steal money.
Well, sure, because at that point in time, let's put it this way. He scored 20 goals last year. They played 56 games. He played 55. I believe he missed one. So he plays in 55. He scores 20 goals. If he gets to, well, let's just say he should have in an 82-game season gotten to 25 easily, pushed 30. If he does get to 30, you've got a 30-goal score for $5 million. That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
And that's what you would want to see with consistency, and that's what I think that's what you thought you had with Konechny going in, and now there's questions all over the place. I mean, I see people who are ready to trade him almost on a daily basis, and I don't get that. I mean, the only reason I don't get that is because for all of the times I've seen people worry about, they're going to do the Justin Williams thing again, they're going to do the Patrick Sharp thing again. Do you really want to trade this guy because he had one playoff in a bubble where he didn't score and then had a down season where everything was different and went wrong and the morale was down? Like, let's see him this year, and then make a determination. I can certainly understand as this season progresses, if you're getting more of what you saw last year and in the playoffs the season before, by all means. Then at that point, you have reason to be concerned because it's 2 years running and it's the wrong direction of progression.
And now you're making big boy money and it's time to produce in the playoffs when it matters.
But it's like Sean Couturier, though, because Couturier started to make more money. He was still definitely, by all accounts, underpaid at 4.1 mil or 4.2 mil
like that,
in that range. He was still definitely underpaid. But he was also not scoring at that level yet at that time. He didn't sign that contract scoring 30 goals. He signed that contract scoring 15.
And by the end of it, he was scoring 30, and it looked like...
And winning Selke trophies and things.
And it looked like a top 5 deal in the National Hockey League.
Right. So, but you have to give it time. I mean, I can still remember going back 6 years or so and listening to Ron Hextall tell everybody, pump the brakes when it comes to Couturier. He's 22. You got to give it time. And... we can argue for days and weeks about what people think of Ron Hextall. I get that. But that's the situation where he's right. He was 22, and now at 28, you literally sit there, and I've seen enough comments that come out that say, where is this team even at? Where do they even go if they don't keep Sean Couturier beyond next season? And they already took care of that. That just goes to show you why it paid off and how this player who, again, could have made $8 million, $9 million after another season of doing this, could have made that just based on the competition, and what everybody else is making.
Right. What does Sean Couturier make on the open market? Like, he might make 9.5.
And instead he takes a contract for $7.75 million a year and solidifies himself not only as your number one center moving forward for the next, at this point, 9 years, because it's an 8-year extension on top of the year that's to come, but also basically just flat out says, this is where I'm going to play forever. And there's nothing that's changing my mind about it. I've already agreed to the deal, and this is where I want to play.
Yep.
And that says a lot. So, I mean, the key difference with Farabee is that now what you're doing is you're basically getting this guy, because this, again, another deal doesn't kick in until next season, so he'll be 22 by that point, getting ready to turn 23. And if that's the case, you're getting him for all the prime years. You're getting him for 23 to 29.
Yep, which we have discovered is when the player produces at the absolute highest level.
Exactly, and I think, again, who knows what he's capable of? We're probably just scratching the surface with him.
Yep,
that's a good thing.
I think Joel Farabee settles into being a 30-goal-a-year scorer and I'm willing to bet he touches 40, maybe multiple times.
Wouldn't that be great?
I'm not saying it happens every year. I'm not saying he's Alexander Ovechkin or Tarasenko or one of these insane, absurd guys, but he's going to put up 30 every year. You can already tell.
I'll tell you what he's going to be. Actually, based on the way you want him to be, I'll tell you exactly who you want him to be, and it's a good tease for what we're going to talk about later. You want him to be Simone Gagne.
I sure do.
And you want him to be Simone Gagne for a lot of reasons, though, too, because you know what?
Is it because he looks a lot like Simone Gagne?
No, it's not that. But I'll tell you why you want him to be that, because he's not a one-trick pony. He's not just the goal-scoring type. Yep. He can set guys up, and he has good two-way ability already. He can play in all situations if needed. He had several good PK shifts last year.
Yeah. And got better at it, significantly better at it as the year went on.
Right, and just remember how young he is and how if he evolves into that role, let's say he's 26, 27, and now he's part of your penalty kill for good. And what happens if he, again, as we talked about all offseason, the new guys who come in, what happens if Cam Atkinson rubs off on him the right way and turns him into exactly the same type of player? Man. A guy who shoots a lot, who scores goals, and who also plays in all situations.
If he starts shooting like Cam Atkinson, he puts up 30 every year, forever.
I don't know about forever, but for the foreseeable future, possibly. I can see that.
It's an exciting time to be a Joel Farabee fan. I'm not going to lie to you.
I think with this, what he needs to do most of all is take everything that happened last year that was successful for him and continue to do it and grow in that, because he wasn't. He started to become, as I look, certainly when Atkinson was acquired by the Flyers, I turned around and I said, this is a guy who solves your shooting problem, if you will. He's not afraid to have that shoot. Exactly. He satisfies everything that people want when they yell that at games. But
the guy he got traded for, it's just, it's poetry.
I hear you. You know what's funny? I think there was a year, I'm not kidding, that Jake Voracek led the team in shots, though, in the last 4 years.
Okay. But was it one of the real bad years? Because that doesn't really count.
I don't remember which one it was, to be honest, but I'm not trying to defend him. What I'm saying is that I guarantee you, I'd love to know how many of them were, came in pointless situations where you were down and out.
Oh, yeah.
And now he's going to do that. I don't know.
And he was just the king of the extra pass on the power play. That's it.
Well, sure, I get that. But beside the point, we're not talking about guys who aren't here anymore.
No, we're not.
Now. But I remember, when I would describe what Atkinson brings, I even said, the closest thing that you did have to that on the team last year was Joel Farabee, who started to show, I'm not afraid to shoot. I will. I mean, he had a couple.
He just started ripping them.
He had a couple goals that are very, that are that type of goal. Goal scorers.
We call them goal scorers goals. Yes, we do.
High slot, let it rip, and you know what was funny? I don't know. Did you see the some of the videos that the team put out from development camp of the guys mic'd up? A couple of the prospects mic'd up.
I saw a couple of the Cam York clips, to be honest.
Oh, okay. I think I'm talking about the Wade Allison ones that I'm thinking of. Because Wade Allison was literally out there with these shooting drills, sitting there. He wanted the ting, if you know what I'm talking about at that point. And Farabee had a few goals like that last year, definitely. And I think that's what. And I'll segue it over to Wade Allison, because Wade Allison already, and look, development camp's not the place to go, oh, he's ready. It's not. But I would be very surprised if Wade Allison is not in camp for a very, very long time.
I agree.
Quite possibly not only through the last game of the preseason, but on that roster at the end of the year, because he seems like he's taken that step. That
he's your first call up.
I don't even know about that. I think he's there. And
okay. I think he could be there, but I think if he's not there, I think it's very, very close, and he's the first name you call if somebody misses time.
And I think he's there because it's going. Let's put it this way: it's going to be somebody who doesn't make a lot of money. It's got to be. That's true. And I think you need to prepare. Look. Whatever you think of the signings, you can think. Prepare yourself for Derek Brassard and Nate Thompson to be part of this team at the beginning in one way or another. And listen, they're going to have 13 forwards. I don't know who's actually playing, who's not.
I don't mind Derek Brassard, for the record.
I can make it, and I can make an assumption. I can make an assumption of who I think the odd guy out is, and I'll spoiler alert for people who are trying to figure it out. And I don't want to jump to conclusions until I see some training camp stuff to actually say anything. But I'll say spoiler alert in my mind, it's not one of the two names I just mentioned.
Okay.
So you can deduct whatever you want from that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Morgan Frost is in the opening lineup.
Well, for sure. But I don't think. Here's the thing. It's not. I don't think he's the guy who also is the odd man out of the lineup either.
No, okay.
I think he's starting at the low, a little bit lower, and I don't think that does anything to derail his progress. I think
he's still young enough that there's still plenty of time on him.
The issue I have with Morgan Frost and making this team right away, and why they've done what they've done, is because how do you back up unless he really, really, really shows you something in these preseason games, in this training camp, with this other competition? How do you even put him on this team right away anyway? I fully expect him to play. I honestly think he could play half the season with the Flyers. At least. It's just, I don't know how he starts here when he's had maximum 4 games, maybe even less than that because of the way that the season went. How do you do that when he's played that much in a year and a half?
Right, you got to give him some time with the Phantoms to get his legs back.
Listen, the easy thing that you can do right away is guys like that get all 6 preseason games. You have 6 preseason games. I'm not worried about listen, I don't need Sean Couturier to play.
And if he looks good enough by the end of it, you run with him.
And it's funny because I know that we didn't have a preseason last year. So because there was no preseason last year, and there was the year before, which was Alain Vigneault's first year. I remember Alain Vigneault basically
be a bleeping Flyer. Yeah.
No, but not just that. But I'm talking about laying the hammer down halfway through camp and going, yeah, the vets need more game time, not just practice time. They need games. So we cut the roster now, and half of these guys are playing tomorrow in a game. And I just don't know that with everything that's still going on, with the way you're going to have to prepare, with the way that you're going to, especially, again, games are going to be closer together again. I don't think you're going to wear guys down in the preseason. So I like Sean Couturier, Claude Giroux.
Take the week off.
It's not even that. They'll practice hard, and I fully expect them to do exactly what they did 2 years ago, because here's the thing. They have to.
Right.
Because if you're not practicing like that, especially when that was what was, by all standards, the key to your success 2 seasons ago, and what did you in last year, according to your coaching staff, which is, well, we just couldn't get on the ice enough, too many games in a row, had to take off days to make sure that guys weren't worn down and had recovery time, so we never practiced. And that's where you work out your issues.
Right.
Well, you want to work out your issues, or at least you want to be ready to go. You're going to have probably about 3 weeks. I mean, even with these preseason games and a couple of days off, I'm sure, scattered in there because you have the time to do it. Let's put it this way. You don't even start your season when everybody else does. You're going to get through training camp and the preseason, set your roster, because there is going to be...
sit around for a week.
Well, no, you're not going to sit around. You're going to practice, but...
You know what I mean.
You're waiting for that game. Exactly. So you get through, like, essentially, I think you get 3 extra practice days before you play a game when everybody else has already started.
Right.
I mean, what, a team like, I think, the Pittsburgh Penguins play on night 1. They go right out there and they play on night 1. The Flyers get 3 more nights to get to that point. And so, by all means, take advantage of it. This is what you said the problem was. Take advantage of it, use it to the fullest, and be ready to go. And make the practices as hard as they were 2 years ago, for sure.
You have to.
But don't overwork these guys in the preseason, specifically in a game setting where they're going against an opposition and things can happen. Like, there's still an element of control in practice, right? Like, there's an element of, well, just don't take it too far, Like, I remember watching scrimmages and guys are colliding with each other possibly, and then at that point in time you're like, pump the brakes. We're not trying to kill each other out here and have injuries, but you do run that risk in a preseason game. Because there is no mercy there.
Right, there's going to be physicality from the other team, right, for sure.
And you're going and let's be real, you're going to have enough guys on that team, and certainly it's fair. Like, again, you don't want to see anybody get hurt, but right. You know who's going to go the hardest. It's going to be the guys who go, I need to prove that I have a roster spot, and I don't get it. It's not guaranteed, Like, it's going to happen. Not an injury, but like, you're going to see that hard level of play even in the preseason. It's going to happen with Cam York and Morgan Frost and Wade Allison, because they know they want a spot and they've got to push for it. That's why they started, and that's why they're still development camp eligible, and why they come back and they do that, and then they go into and they'll be part of. I'm sure they'll be part of this rookie camp coming up, whenever rookie camp is. That's like that little,
It's a pre-camp almost.
Precursor to the main camp that's coming up. But they're going to want to show off and show everything they've got and how they fit right away, and they're going to do it magnified. You're not going to see Claude Giroux or Sean Couturier have to worry about that stuff. They know.
Right.
They know. So
they've been around.
So you don't have to worry about that if you're them. So you're not, look, if you want to play in games, by all means play in games. And usually the home games in the preseason are reserved for that. That's the perfect opportunity. You're going to play, and then after that, you can go home. And they don't make them, they usually, they don't make them travel in the preseason. They go,
play the home games.
They're going to Washington, going to Boston, you stay home. You finish up your practice, go home, have a recovery night. Just sit there and relax. Put the game on, it'll be on.
Yeah.
But just relax.
Right.
And that's what you can take from that. But certainly, back to Farabee, this is one of the guys who doesn't have to do that. And Farabee might be a guy who, as much as you want to get his legs going and things like that, because he's younger, he can probably handle more preseason games. You're even going to be careful with him, because
you'll see him play more than Couturier and Giroux, I'm sure.
He'll probably play 4.
Yeah. I expect them to play probably 2, maybe 3. He'll probably play 4.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's fine, because you give him a chance to get his legs going. But again, you keep him fresh, because he's one of your horses now. He's got to be ready for the season.
Right. Exactly. And beyond that, like you want him to be as good as he can be you know what he can be now too. I mean, you've already seen it. You've seen what he's capable of. You know he's still growing as a player too. I just, look, I like everything about his game anyway because he's in a year where we questioned effort and we questioned desire and things like that. Here's like the season.
He's the one guy who stood out.
But not even just that. The season was over. You're playing literally.
You're playing for nothing.
Well, not even that, but you're playing literally the final period of a season that you've realistically known was over for a month.
Yep.
Let's be real. Officially over for about a week and a half, but realistically over for a month.
Right.
And he's going out there with such determination. Like, he gets a goal in that to start that final game. He's sitting on 19.
Yep.
And he wanted that 20th more than anything from that point
on. He sure did.
And that tells me a lot about the player because that says that I'm willing to go just as hard in game 82 when it doesn't mean anything.
Right. If that's how hard he's fighting in this game, how hard is he fighting in game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final?
And I think it's impressive to say that he started his year off, a breakout year for him. He started his year off with a 4-point game.
Yeah.
Right away.
Yep.
4 points right off the bat. And then finishes it with a 2-goal game.
While the team was doing well last season, doing okay last season, before the team fell off a cliff last season, let's put it that way.
Okay, so while the team was getting through with good results, even though they were not playing their best.
Before the bender.
Yes.
Joel Farabee was the most exciting thing about the team.
Joel Farabee was starting to rank toward the top of the league in...
And he had a little bit of a cold... He did have a little bit of a cold streak there for about a month before the COVID break, and then, kind of when the team took a dump. But even from that point on, Joel Farabee was still probably their best forward outside of Sean Couturier.
You always felt like he had a shot to score a goal last year.
And the fact that this kid, the mental toughness that this kid exhibited last year, just with the team playing like they were playing around him.
Right.
The fact that he was always digging, always pushing, always fighting. Joel Farabee never gave up last season. And with a team that bad,
yeah,
man, that kid's a dog. That kid is a dog, and I love it.
Look,
I love it. I can't wait till he's wearing an A.
You know, it's funny. I was trying to remember. I forget why I wanted to see it. I just know because you know what? Because it's the first Sunday of football season, and we did a show last year at this time too. Because but ironically, the funny part was like
it was the playoffs.
The playoffs are going on. The Flyers were like a week removed from being in the playoffs to begin with.
Man,
you know what I mean? Like
we were still talking about Oscar Lindblom coming back.
Right, but we had a conversation because. I don't even know. Oh, I know why this was the subject. Again, we were talking about Sean Couturier. The subject reason was because that was when he had been awarded the Selke for the 2019-20 season, which sounds weird to say that it was happening in early September, but whatever.
It's not.
But we were talking about if you had to pick, like, so who is the next captain of the team? If you had to pick today or in a week or in a month or in a year or whatever.
It's Sean Couturier.
We said that, but you thought that Farabee was a guy who I was going to say, like, in the long haul, keep an eye on him, and I think that you're not that far off.
I don't think I am either.
But
the kid just there's no quit, zero, and that's what this team needs. That every team needs. Let's be real.
And look, I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to sit here and try to figure out exactly what the problems were in the room. And here's the thing: we weren't there.
Right.
Media-wise, if we could go down there and kind of get a feel for, not even that we would definitely see anything, but I'm sure we would get a feel for a little something. We would be able to read a little bit more body language if we're down there trying to talk to them in person every single time they lose a game like this. And maybe, here's the other thing, though, too. Like, we've said this, too. Maybe they're not that bad of a team if the in-person angle was still, the normal way. Right? Because if that's normal, then going out is normal, and bubbles aren't a thing, and... So maybe they are still going in that direction that they were going 2 seasons ago, last season, if everything seemed like it was normal, but it wasn't normal. And we couldn't go down there to get a feel for it. So I don't want to speculate on who was exactly the problem areas of the room, who was part of the wrong mix that Chuck Fletcher talked about. But I feel safe saying it wasn't Joel Farabee.
Right.
But Joel Farabee was just this kid who came to work every day, and,
Right.
and felt such an importance to be as good as he could be because he's building on what he did a year ago too. Like he had a really solid playoff. I mean, he didn't score a lot, especially once the second round hit.
Well,
but,
even remember the conversation he had with Elaine Vigneault in training camp 2 years ago. You know, you'll be back.
You'll be back very soon.
You'll be back very soon. He went down 4 points, 4 AHL games. Boom, he's back up.
And then never looked back. I mean, really never looked back. You know what? Somebody asked that question at his press conference after the extension too, or like at least mentioned it. Like,
what's that?
About that conversation, about being told, like going from being told, literally within the last 2 years or 2 years.
You'll be back.
The start of the 2019 season, 2019-20, being told almost 2 years ago, you didn't make the team. You're on this trip with them in Czech Republic, but you didn't make the team. But
I forgot that happened.
But keep working hard because you're going to be back, and it'll be real soon. And he goes down and plays those few games, and then he's right back up.
2 weeks later, he's back.
But now, within 2 years of doing that, has signed a long-term extension that says you're an NHL player.
And also, by the way, you're going to make $30 million while doing it.
To go from
because I don't think we mentioned it here, but the AAV is $5 million. By the way,
I did hint to it because I said you're going to be making $5 million a year, but I did not say the $30 million total. Which, like, you know what? We almost don't talk about contracts that way anymore. Where you go, you're going to make $30 million. Like, we don't talk about it like that in the NHL because it's all about
the AAV. Yep.
Exactly.
You get the AAV, and then the next question is it buyout proof? But not normally for the first contract out of an ELC, but you know.
Right. So, look, I'm looking forward. I've already looked forward to the idea of watching his career for years to come. I think now we know even more so that we're going to be doing that. And
now we're just going to be celebrating that he's underpaid.
And I'm not surprised either because, like, here's the thing. He's got local ties because his dad's from the area, so he knew the team well and he knew the city a little bit. And, you know, even though he grew up just outside of Syracuse, he's got familiarity with the area. It was almost like a kismet moment that he was drafted here because of that. And I think he likes the idea of being here. I'm sure he can get a much nicer place in the area now. He already expressed, because a question he got asked, not on the press call, but like he did a couple of interviews after the fact. He actually spoke to my guy Broads on the Fanatic.
Good old Broads.
Earlier, like literally right after doing that press availability on the day that the contract was signed, but also did some of the stuff that the team puts out, things like that, and got asked a couple times with the question, what are you gonna, what is there something that you would want to buy with the money? Like you're gonna be making way more money.
What are you gonna do with it? Right?
Is there a splurge item and whatever? And I mean, he's modest about it. He didn't have anything significant, but he did say he wants to try to buy a home that probably falls on the water up where he's from in that Syracuse area, because certainly there's places for that, I'm sure, and things like that, and that's fine. But I do imagine he can also get, in addition to, hey, I want to buy a home in New York.
I'm pretty sure the bank's going to look at him and go, "Oh, you have a $30 million contract? Yeah, sure, you can borrow as much as you need, buddy."
Well, not only that, but I think that means he can also get a pretty decent apartment or something for. I mean, let's this way. It's kind of like the Carter Hart discussion too. When Carter Hart came up, and you're going, he's 20.
Is he sticking?
No, not even that. No, not even that. It's he's 20. Chances are then he's not looking for permanent residence yet. He buys he rents an apartment. I'm sure a nicer one. I mean, let's this way. Carter Hart, when he got called up, basically when they told him get a place to stay because you're not going back to the minors, he lived in Jake Voracek's old place.
Right.
And got it and was allowed to just have it because
Jake just had an extra house laying around.
But in general, it's you're not you're just looking. What you're looking to do at that point is you're looking to live for yourself. They don't have families yet.
Right.
They will. I mean, by the time this contract's over, Joel Farabee probably will.
If he wants to, yeah.
I mean, Travis Konechny's there now.
He is, by the way. We need to mention that. Congratulations, Travis.
Yeah, all the pictures going around, stuff like that. I mean, there's been a lot of things going on because, I mean, over the course of that time, obviously we've seen that. Claude Giroux and his wife welcomed another baby as well. Yep. Shane Gostisbehere, even though now he's a former Flyer, he had gotten married in the middle of all this, and a lot of his former teammates went, though. Like, I mean,
right.
I don't know if you saw those pictures where, like, at least 5 of them, right?
Like, no, I missed those.
But there was at least 5 teammates, or former teammates anyway, because, I mean, Konechny was there, Travis Sanheim was there, Oscar Lindblom was there. Guys like that. I don't know if he was in the picture or not. He might have been. I think Robert Haig was even there.
Okay.
Like these guys, and look, this is the way the hockey community is, right? I mean, we know this. There's guys like that all over the place, So, and let's be real, we're not quite to training camps yet, so it is still that season, if you will. That it's
the off season.
Well, in terms of it's still wedding season and all that type of stuff, because we see this all the time. How many of these players who spend from June to August just bouncing around to each other's weddings,
and half the time end up shirtless doing a keg stand, or something to that effect.
I didn't see as much of that, but.
Well, no, there probably wasn't quite as much, but I'm sure some of it happened. People are just getting better about pictures.
But anyway, let's move on, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because so Joel Farabee's contract, it's nice to know he's locked up. Honestly, I mean,
it's fantastic news to know he's locked up.
Before we wrap on this topic and go to the other thing that's going to dominate our talk for the week, I do want to say about this contract too. Now that you've done this as well, this goes back to, and again, I remember talking about this, I think, with the Couturier one. You know what you're paying the person for a long time. And now you really
certainty.
But now you really know, like now probably 2 of the biggest ones you have had to sign after next season. So what you're left asking yourself is, if Rasmus Ristolainen works, and if Claude Giroux is willing to come back on a contract that I guess fits both sides completely, which it might come to that. We'll see. I mean, they're tabling that discussion for now, and that's fine. I don't think there's any pressure. I don't think Claude Giroux is going to sit there and go, I'm going to start looking everywhere else before Philadelphia.
No, it's pretty clear that he wants to re-sign here, and they want him to re-sign here.
Right. It's just a matter of will it work, I think. And again, it's a matter of if there's any change of heart whatsoever on either side based on the way the year goes.
Right, and I think at this point, both parties are willing to make it work.
I think both parties are willing to at least let the season play out and understand why it can't happen now, but also there is, I would certainly say there's a desire.
Yeah, absolutely.
But beside the point with that, is there anybody else beyond that outside of guys who either you're going to probably re-sign to close to the same amount that they made, or they're entry-level guys who, yes, you might have to give them a little bit more, but you're starting to already try to bank on what you may have available? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And you may also be looking at some of these guys and going, are these guys going to be expendable eventually?
Right.
Like, is Keith Yandel a 1-year Flyer so that Cam York can come up and the contract is virtually identical?
That's fair.
Is Derek Brassard the same thing for Morgan Frost? Or Nate Thompson? Or, is Nick Aube-Kubel, who has 1 year left at just over $1 million, the type of guy who you say, you know what, for the same amount of money, I'll get somebody else to fill the same role. Like you start, those are the things you have down the line, but it's the big ones that matter, because you can worry about evening out money exactly, or this young player's ready to go or whatever at that time.
Right.
You can't worry about, or it's harder to worry about the guy that's going to make $7 million or $8 million or whatever,
right.
Like the fact that you have Couturier out of the way and it's under $8 million, barely, but it's under $8 million. And that's, it's a great thing. And Joel Farabee now.
Remember when Seattle took Carson Twarynski instead of James Van Riemsdyk?
I don't think that's going to be a bad thing, though.
No, I don't either. But just in terms of the cap wouldn't be nearly as much of a problem if they took his $7 million off the books. And I think this is a year that you can kind of survive the loss of JVR, because I think he's going to end up on your third line for most of the season.
Here's the thing about that, though. And I'm not trying to sit there and tell you that JVR is going to be the greatest player on the team or anything like that, but I wonder something about the team as we know it right now, as we start to build up excitement and anticipation for a new season with a lot of new faces. I genuinely wonder if things are very different if JVR is the guy who goes to Seattle with the way that the rest of the offseason progressed. Is
Really?
Cam Atkinson a flyer?
Really?
You don't know, because then you're not trying to make the cap dump. You're not worried about trading Jake Voracek's contract.
You're not worried about trimming that extra $3 million off or whatever you save.
Right. Like, you're not sitting here playing that game because of the fact that you go, well, now we have to get even more creative because Seattle did nobody any favors. And it's not just the
No,
Flyers,
they didn't.
But Seattle didn't do the Flyers any favors. They didn't do anybody any favors.
Seattle did Seattle favors.
Which means that in order to get the cap space to then add Ristolainen and add Atkinson, make signings that were cost effective for Yandel and Thompson and Brassard, and taking a chance on Martin Jones at $2 million.
You had to make some costly trades.
But you made the trades based off of that. You made trades that involved, like,
Shane Gostisbehere, second-round pick.
Shane Gostisbehere, I think, was going to be a guy they would have tried to trade anyway.
I understand.
But here's what I mean.
The need became high.
Sure, but here's what I mean by that, too. If you lose JVR in expansion, even if you trade Gostisbehere to free up more money, are you trading Robert Haig with everything else to get Ristolainen at that point? Because it didn't sound like it was necessary. It was done because the Flyers literally had to throw in, we need something out of here that makes, that's a player who makes money on the books, because that's the only way we're going to make this work.
Right.
And they did. And then again, I still go back to, do they trade Jake Voracek and his contract and try to make that a 1-for-1 deal where the whole contract goes? Do they do that if all that doesn't happen the way it does? And are they out there trying to make cost-effective signings for Brassard and Yandel and guys like that? Because at the end of the day, if someone told them 2 days before, well, not 2 days, it was 2 days before the draft, but 2 days, or like a week before free agency, someone's going to give you $7 million, no strings. Do you think you're worried about making trades at that point? Or are you going to go out there and look at the free agent market and go, you know what? I'm making a call to said name,
Right. You might be right about that. That's fair.
Because now you actually had money to throw around. You didn't have money to throw around, so the best method you could take was, I've got to trade this guy for this guy and move this and do that, and it became a math test mixed with, Tetris in a way, like trying to balance out what fits properly. How can we get under the cap to make this all work?
Which, to be fair, I think Chuck Fletcher absolutely aced.
Here's the reason why it's a good offseason, no matter what happens, but to an extent already it's a good offseason for him, because you needed to make changes. We all knew that. But on top of that, there was no easy way to do this. And there was definitely not an easy way to address virtually every need you had, from top pair defenseman to maybe adding another defenseman, backup goalie, third line center.
Some veteran depth.
Penalty killing help. Like, you needed help in every physical area possible, and somehow or other found a way to do it.
He did it all
in such a way. I mean, and listen, there's always going to be that person out there who says, but they didn't get a 40-goal score. You don't know that yet. And I mean, they're trying to develop a couple, I would say. And look, would you like the proven commodity? Everybody would. Absolutely. But you weren't going to be able to go and get 20 people in one off. I mean, look, he tried. But you weren't going to be able to get 20 players in an off. Like, you don't overturn a roster with 10 players possibly, or, in this case, at least 6, 7 guys. You don't do it with all stud players who play top 6 or top 4.
Right.
You just don't. Like, some of it is the guys who fill a specific role, and that's all that they do.
And I think the biggest risk of that bunch is Martin Jones. If I'm looking at the lineup right now, moves aside, right? Like, we all questioned the Rasmus Ristolainen trade, but he's here and the move's done, and he's in the roster. So right. Looking at the roster right now, I think the biggest question mark is that backup goalie slot. And I don't know if I trust Martin Jones.
There's two things I'll say about this, because first of all, don't stop worrying about not trusting Martin Jones, because I'm not saying that that's not the area to be concerned about. Shouldn't be concerned about him as much as you should be focused on Carter Hart needs to be himself, and then Martin Jones will fall into line one way or the other. And I say this because, number one, if you're relying on Martin Jones to save you, then that's where your problem lies. What you need is Carter Hart to be the guy who builds a.
Well,
I can live with, and I'm not kidding when I say this. If Carter Hart is his usual self, you can live with Martin Jones being 500 Brian Elliott, if you will, record wise.
But
in terms of,
I'm concerned that poor Martin Jones results, and I don't know. I haven't even seen a 500 goalie out of him the last couple of years.
I just mean by record. I'm not talking about safe. Like, I know what you're looking at, but
I'm concerned that if Martin Jones struggles, it will force Carter Hart to play more and too much. And
Fair.
I was hoping that they would go out and get somebody who would be able to take maybe some more starts. I know there were kind of a lot of tandem type guys out there this offseason. And being able to pick up a backup who could reliably start 30, 35 games would have been kind of nice. And I think that would have helped Carter Hart transition a little bit better. Martin Jones, I'm concerned that if he plays poorly, Alain Vigneault cuts him off at 22.
okay, so I understand then. So your concern is not he can't play more games. It's if he's not good enough, they're going to turn to somebody else. And
they're going to keep playing Carter Hart. Right. It's not right.
Well, because I think I saw somewhere, and I can't remember if it was just the last 3 full seasons, maybe like full 82s, or if it was the last 3 seasons in general. But I don't think there's a goalie who started more games or played in more games in the last 3-4 years than Martin Jones in the league.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking about a guy who, before we get to the actual 2 shortened seasons where teams didn't make it to 70, or in this case, the 54 game season, he had played 4 straight seasons, 4 straight 82 game seasons, where his games play total was the number of starts he made. He never got like inserted into a game that he didn't start. Wow. And the numbers are 65, 65, 60, and 62.
Jesus.
So
that's a lot of hockey.
It is, but that's why there's also an angle to playing him fewer and farther between will make him better for the lack of work, because of the fact that you get more. First of all, you get more practice time. Everything depends on that.
Yeah. 34-year-old starter and
okay. Your mic was cutting out. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
We good now?
Yeah.
All right. I said it's kind of like taking a 34-year-old starter and giving him a shot in the bullpen. Like you're changing his role, and it doesn't always translate.
I get your analogy. It's not the best one because the reason being is because if you change the guy's role in baseball from a whatever age starter to bullpen role, sometimes you're sitting here saying, I don't need you to be the guy you were 5 years ago and give me 6. I need you to give me 2.
Well, that's what you're saying to Martin Jones.
Yeah, but I'm talking about from a game length standpoint. Like, you're asking him to still play the game the same way. It's just maybe make fewer starts.
You know what I mean. It's close enough.
No, I get what you're saying. It's just, I don't know. I understand if anybody's coming into the season and the only thing you have doubts on are, I don't know what Ristolainen's going to be and I don't know what Jones is going to be. Because I don't even think you can make that argument about Nate Thompson. I can understand why people roll their eyes at Nate Thompson's sign.
We know what he's going to be.
But you know what he's going to be. And
he's going to be medium.
And I don't think that that's a problem if you use him properly. And by use him properly, I mean 40 games max.
Right. As your fourth line center.
And as a guy, or if he ends up playing 50 or something like that, it's because there are injury issues and you're not going to play Morgan Frost for 8 minutes a night.
Right.
Because it's not worth it.
That's not
how he should be used. So that's where I get it. But like I don't feel like you're questioning, I don't know what Nate Thompson can bring, or if he his role and how he should be used. I even think we said this about these guys anyway. We like these signings anyway. The other ones, like Brassard for his role should be good, and Yandel for his role should be good, because we know what they are and we know what they're capable of, and we've seen that they are still capable of good things when used properly. So if Keith Yandle comes in and is power play specialist and plays third pairing minutes and gives you exactly the production that he gave in Florida on the power play and so on, you'll be fine. But
yeah,
it
absolutely.
But it does need to be that. But if that's what you can expect, it'll be fine. And
yeah, I think that's what we can say about this team.
But it's everybody else. It's Ellis needs to be as advertised. It's Ristolainen. You need to hope for that bounce back, that change of scenery thing. What's Atkinson at this stage of his career? What does Martin and Martin Jones do? But I don't think that everybody, like, I feel like we're doing this and we're saying it about Martin Jones specifically when it comes to the goaltending. And again, I think we need to be questioning everybody. Like, it's Carter Hart needs to bounce back. That's a byproduct of Martin Jones' performance. And it's the same thing going across the board. Like, Kevin Hayes wasn't healthy last year. So if he's healthy this year, he should have a better year, right?
He should. Yeah.
So there you go. And everybody, Sean Couturier was never really fully healthy in the grand scheme of things. If he's ready to go, he should be better. Scott Lawton needs to be better. Abe Kubel needs to be better. Like, there's a whole list of guys that we can sit there and say, well, they need to bounce back as much as any of these new guys need to be better than they were maybe in the previous stop.
By the way, I think, sorry, you mentioned Kevin Hayes, and I think Kevin Hayes is going to come out as a monster this year. I
think he's got an awful lot to play for.
I think he has an
last show.
awful lot to play for.
By the way, there was an. I think he put it. I think
you're going to say what I'm going to say, or what I was going to say.
Well, yep. No, but he put it on his Instagram at some point. But I don't know if you saw this or not. But he did specifically. It was. I don't think he took the video. I think it was.
It was a TSN video.
No. It was. Oh no, it wasn't. I'm not talking about from the. From the
service. You're not talking about from the service. Okay.
No, but I did go back and watch. Man,
that was a tough watch.
That was a tough watch.
It
was actually just the other day because apparently I assume that Jimmy's wife and kids were either in town because I assume in town because I assume Kevin Hayes is back completely unless he went back up to the Boston area,
which is completely not impossible
for a weekend or whatever.
Which is not impossible at this point.
But the video had to do with something like starting him young or something like that, and it's Jimmy's oldest son playing with his uncle
right
out there, and they're just running around having a good time and
oh no, that's awesome.
And it was funny because the kid got a big smile on his face after scoring or whatever, and just play and they're just goofing off, and you can totally see the personality. I mean, like you see Jimmy.
So the kid's a Hayes, got it.
Oh yes, that in every sense of the.
And you know exactly what I mean when I say that the Hayes family is. But it was just the Hayes family.
But it was just nice to see because it's not a surprise. We already have that idea of what a tight-knit family they are anyway. And there you go. Like, it was just awesome. It was so cool.
Well, I think that just about does it for the conversation on the present-day Flyers.
Yeah, so let's go to a new conversation where we have a little bit of stuff to talk about.
So we do have a conversation about the days of Flyers past, as it were.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, some more distant than others, but yeah, we'll get into it.
Some not nearly distant enough. So the Flyers have announced 6 finalists for induction into the Flyers Hall of Fame.
So I'm trying to figure out exactly when this all came to. I think it was the Tuesday after our last show. There was word that there was this new committee had formed, and they were going to go back to doing this. I have to go and pull up the list again.
Yeah, I can read the list off. I have it up here.
Oh no, not of the finalists.
Oh, okay.
The list of like when they last, when they last inducted. I do know when they last inducted. The last inductee was Jimmy Watson in
February of 2016.
But to kind of go over, because again we were talking about this before we started recording, the gaps between when they do because they had a couple of these in a row over the course of a couple of seasons. So this really came back with the dual induction of John LeClair and Eric Lindros. That was the first of one in a kind of a long running.
Right, they kind of brought it back,
and they did that. And then here's the catch with that. So they do that ceremony, and a lot of players from that team are there, right? Like Michael Renberg comes out and joins them because
they did the Legion of Doom thing.
Legion of Doom is back there, but but other guys who they played with. Because at that point in time, at that point in time, Chris Terrian was still working for NBC, so he comes out because he was a teammate with him. Eric Desjardins there, and then Eric Desjardins was there.
Love me some Eric Desjardins.
Eric Desjardins was there going in later that season.
Loved me some Eric Desjardins in NHL 99. Eric Lindros on the cover.
Yeah, that's right. So Eric Desjardins went in right after, and then the following year they did Rod Brindamore, and then Jimmy Watson was the last one.
Right.
So they had 4 ceremonies and 5 inductees in a 2-season span.
Right. And then nothing.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like
it's just sporadic. They pull it together and decide when they want to boost the PR.
Here's the thing. So I'm looking at the whole list now, and you go, okay, they formed this in 1988. The Hall of Fame, and they have their first ceremony, and they induct the first 2 most obvious people way back when the pause was going on. If you remember us doing shows about the greatest flyer bracket.
Oh man, the dark days.
But these were the dark days when there was nothing on. I know. These were the 2 names, the very first 2 names in the Flyers Hall of Fame. These were the 2 names that stood out among all the rest when we were picking among players anyway. So these were the obvious top 2. They were the first 2 in the Hall of Fame. So it was Bob Clark and Bernie Perrant.
Oh, it wasn't Andrew McDonald and Andre Mazzaros?
Long before their NHL careers. Long before.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, as I'm looking, I didn't realize this. So as I'm looking, very consistent, by the way, in terms of March of '88, those 2 go in. March of '89, the next year. Bill Barber, Keith Allen, Ed Snyder. Okay?
Fair enough.
Makes a lot of sense. March of '90, Rick McLeish, Fred Shero. March of '91, Barry Ashby, Gary Dornhofer. Like, you're consistently doing this March. Okay, and then they started to switch the month a little bit, just based off, I guess, the way the schedule dictated. But at the same time, it's still every year. So '92. Gene Hart, Reggie Leach, '93, Joe Scott, Ed Van Impe, '94, Tim Carr. Like, you're starting to continue this trend. They took a season off. Now, I'm going.
Was that the lockout?
I think so.
Okay.
So I think the lockout shortened into '95 year. They didn't do it.
Fair enough.
And then they come right back in '96, and Joe Watson gets inducted. And then they took 2 years off, legitimately. And now again, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was the final year of the Spectrum. So they opened a new building. I think they were so focused on the new building they didn't have any for a year.
Bobby Clark and Eric Lindros skated a lap, etc., etc. Yeah. They did the Spectrum thing.
But it's twofold, because I think in fall of '96 they opened the building, and by summer of '97 they're in the Stanley Cup final.
Right.
So it's
well, technically they're in the Stanley Cup final. They were never really in the Stanley Cup final.
I mean, they're playing in it. They made an appearance.
Qualify. I think even appearance is a little strong.
All right. Well, anyway, come on. Look at who was on those Detroit teams. Let's stop.
Oh no, I'm not saying they didn't deserve to get murdered, but they got kind of murdered.
But so the bottom line is that. So anyway, bottom line, there's not a whole lot that happened for a couple of years leading up to. It took until '99 for the next inductee to go in. That was Brian Propp. Then another 2 years go by, and you do it again. So then Mark Howe goes in. Then again, 2-year gap.
It's probably the Wachovia Center by now.
Yeah, but it's not like it's a new building. Like, it's not like
no, I know.
Significant.
Well, it's no longer the First Union Center, because I remember those days.
So 2004, Dave Poulin. 2000. And see, here we go again. Now the gaps are getting bigger. 2004. Then 2008. Ron Hextall, 2009, Dave Schultz, and that's fine. But then there was a 5-year gap until we get to the Lindros Leclerc inductions, and now a gap from 16 till now. And I get it. Last year you weren't going to do this. The year before you could have, but things got cut short. So you could have actually been sitting on there's somebody whose ceremony or was supposed to happen and got bumped because of all the stuff last year. Maybe not for the Flyers, but maybe it was Chris Pronger even. Wasn't
that
Chris
sounds
Ponger's
about right.
number retirement supposed to happen a year ago?
Something
and they
like that.
Never even got it scheduled because of everything.
But regardless, we do finally get to our nominees. In the 21-22 season, one or maybe more of the following are eligible to be inducted.
The catch was, and it was detailed in their explanation of the process, that a committee was going to nominate multiple people. So I don't know what look, we're going to talk about 6 specifically. I don't know what the list completely started at. It could have been something in the range of 15 to 20, honestly.
Right.
Like you could have sat
It
there.
could have been higher than that.
These are 20 names that we think could be, and then you pass it over to a group that is going to sit there and say, hey, here are the finalists, and that's what goes to vote among a whole bunch of people. It's alumni. It's
Hall of Fame Flyers, Flyers Hall of Fame members, Flyers alumni, members of the front office, broadcasters, and members of the Philadelphia chapter of the PHWA.
Yeah, the only thing that it does not actually is go to the fans. Interestingly enough,
I'm a little surprised by that.
A little, but not overly. But anyway,
But on this year's list,
let's go ahead and give the 6, and then get into it
in alphabetical order:
yes.
Simone Gagne, Paul Holmgren, Bob Kelly, Lou Nolan, my boy, Mark Recchi, and Rick Tocchet.
All right, where do you want to start?
If Lou doesn't get in, I'm gonna riot.
Okay, I agree with you there. I think that he absolutely should get in too. I think it would be long overdue.
Lou Nolan belongs on the Flyers Mount Rushmore with Ed Snyder, Gene Hart, and probably Bobby Clark. Well, that's Mount Rushmore right now.
You're talking about somebody who's been there from day one.
Yep.
I mean, literal day one.
If Lou doesn't get in, this guy is very upset about it.
I will be upset about it as well, because you know what, especially for all the times that I've seen it, like even when there wasn't a discussion, like there was, like I'm saying, meaning there wasn't a discussion to be had. It's not like they were talking about, oh, we're going to do this, like we're going to have Hall of Fame ceremonies coming up or whatever. Like it's in the years when there's none of that, and people go, no, they should put Lou Nolan into the Flyers Hall of Fame.
Correct.
And you go, you know what? Based on that amount of discussion, I think that now that he's actually a finalist, this should be a no-brainer. And for what it's worth, now I can't speak for everybody. I can't speak for the other Flyers Hall of Fame members or the, I don't want to say the broadcasters, but
right.
The media and the broadcasters, I probably can see a little bit more of where people might be thinking, if you will, because there were a lot of media members that went, hey, it's really cool that Lou Nolan's a finalist. So I can imagine he's probably going to get a few votes.
Well, right, and I don't know what the voting criteria exactly is in terms of like how many votes you need to get in or where the numbers are and et cetera, et cetera. If only one person gets in, it better be Lou Nolan, because on that list, I don't see anybody. Okay, a lot of those guys deserve a spot. They're all deserving finalists. I don't have a problem with anybody being on that list. I have a problem with anybody getting one spot over Lou Nolan.
I don't think it's going to be one. And I don't think it's going to be one.
I agree.
I don't think it's going to be one because it's been so long that you're going to have enough people who go, these people should really be in.
And let's face it, if you do 2 or 3, that means you get to do 2 or 3 nights about it.
No, I think it's all going to be one.
Do they do it all on the same night? Okay.
No, I agree with you, because in the past, like, okay, it was a no-brainer years ago to sit there and say if John LeClair and Eric Lindros are going in, they should go in together.
They go in together, right.
Together. But, I mean, like we said, Eric Desjardins went in later that year. He was there that night. They didn't sit there and say, you're crashing that night too, we're putting you in. I mean, he was part of the same teams.
Right, they could have done it.
So I like it better when they do it the other way around, I'll admit. I think it's better if you can give... For the most part, I'm not going to sit there and say they couldn't double some people up.
People who make sense to be together.
Now, granted, it is also more the classic way to do it. Like, we're looking at it now and going, they would do 2 ceremonies like this a year to add 2 people.
One day when Claude Giroux and Sean Couturier go into the Flyers Hall of Fame, do they go in together, or do they each get their own night?
Depends on when they're done playing.
Okay.
Because I can't guarantee you that Sean Couturier is going to be that far removed from his playing days to then go into...
To just go straight into the rafters.
Right. Well, when they would do something with Claude Giroux.
That's fair.
When, which, let's be real, it's probably not going to be an if.
Hello, right? It's not an if at this point. He's been your captain for more than a decade, almost a decade.
He's... what, third in game or second in games played?
Right. He's not going into the Flyers Hall of Fame. Hello.
Well, we'll see. We're going to get into that argument in a minute, I'm sure, because like we're going to not the Drew argument. I'm talking about like about
Who deserves to be there?
About where people rank in certain categories, and then how we think that they're deserving enough of this. I certainly think if a guy is ranked top 5 in all of those categories, except for goals, that I think he's going into the Flyers Hall of Fame when his playing days are done.
Yeah.
All right, so back to the back to the process a little bit too, because I just mentioned that list of names who are in the Flyers Hall of Fame already. Like, I think that second ceremony that had 3 people go in at one time, that was all done collectively. So, like, they did 3 people the same night and inducted all 3, and all 3 of them spoke, I'm sure, and things like that. So, like, I think it's just more of a classic approach to it, but we're so used to, like, you know what it is that we're used to? We're used to either one a year, or we're used to them spacing them out more. Like, if we go back to, I think I said it was Hextall in 08. Hextall went in by himself, and then Dave Schultz went in the next year. And then it was the Lindros Leclerc one doubled up, but that made a lot of sense. And then Desjardins by himself. And then Brindamore by himself. And then Jimmy Watson by himself. Like, we've been, for over a decade, we've been used to the idea that it's basically, here's one new addition, one new inductee. It's their night, and that's it. And instead, I think what you're going to get is it's just going to be Flyers Hall of Fame night.
And here's everybody.
And it's going to be, I think they're trying to do it like so that they can pick a night based on when everybody who would get inducted is completely available, which
makes sense.
Well, it makes sense, but in my opinion, I don't think if it's the people who I think it's going to be, it shouldn't be that difficult.
Okay. Because losing the building every night?
Well, losing the building every night, yeah. But I wouldn't be shocked if the other 2 that I'm thinking of aren't there pretty frequently.
Okay, so if you're filling out a ballot and you get a 1, 2, 3, who's your 1, 2, 3 here?
Okay.
Because you're not terribly far removed from potentially getting a vote in one of these things one day.
I don't know about that.
Hey, you're closer than I am.
All right, fair enough. Well, we already discussed Lou Nolan, so I think Lou Nolan's got.
Hello, ding, ding, ding. Right. So
right.
Gagne, Holmgren, Kelly, Recchi, Tocchet.
Okay. Again, I want to start this off by saying that, and I tweeted this out when the list came out. Anybody who goes in, and the funny thing is that I've actually watched on Twitter how there are people who go, "Oh, come on, this person shouldn't be in." Like,
these guys are all
right. They all would be deserving in some way.
Is Tocchet the easy name to pick off here?
Yes.
And I completely disagree, just because of what he did for the franchise. Just he was a huge part of this team for a very long time.
I'm not saying he won't. I'm not saying he won't make it eventually. I
know.
Now,
I just mean the people who are criticizing his inclusion in this finalist list are completely disregarding what he did for this team.
I think what happens when this type of discussion comes up too is that people then don't realize how much of an impact said players had on the team either.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, there's an element to that where if you just don't realize what a player did or whatever. And this is like, this discussion goes back, like, I'm throwing one off top of my head here without trying to go into too much detail. But like Gagne, for example, there were a couple people who actually put out there later, like, wait a minute, Gagne played how many games for the team? It didn't feel like that.
It was a lot of games, man.
Right. And I go, like, you sit there and go, exactly. That's why we're having this like, you might not think he's the best representation of the greatest success stories in Flyers history, whoever you're thinking of, but there's only a handful that really get to that level. You know what I mean? Like, I understand. Look, not everybody can be Bobby Clark. You know, like
no.
I understand where you want people. Like, honestly, by this stage of the whole thing, if they're not inducted by now, then what are you doing? Like,
right.
If the player who is that high on the lists of everything, and let's just say you have one. He's just not done playing yet, so he's not going to the Flyers Hall of Fame now.
But I think he's going to walk off the ice directly into the Flyers Hall of Fame. Just he retires, and just the next door he opens is the Flyers Hall of Fame.
Right.
But hopefully that's not going to be for a very long time, Claude. You're not going anywhere, buddy.
All right, so I'm pulling up the article I wrote where I kind of detailed what each person did, just so I can kind of make a claim for everybody, so to speak. So let's see here, because it's really, like I said, every single one of them would be deserving.
Yes.
I think, personally, and this might not be popular, you might not think this is popular, I'm going with it anyway. Tockett's the easy one to exclude right away because I think
his numbers aren't flashy enough.
Right. Not compared to the rest of the people on the list, not compared to the overall impact that he would have had on the franchise compared to the others.
I understand,
He's not, even down to he's not even, like, Lou Nolan's been here forever. The other guys, some of the other ones on the list, been here forever, it feels like, right? Like, as long as some people can remember watching this team, these people have had an association with this team. And Tocchet has not. Tocchet has coached in other places. Tocchet has played in other places. He had 2 different times, played with the Flyers twice over his career, different times. Finished his career here, I believe, in addition to starting it. Like, you got some stuff here.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he goes in immediately when you... Let's just say, you would have to have 6 inductees if he's going to go in right now.
You're not wrong.
I think Gagne's a tough one because Gagne is more than deserving by all accounts. I just wonder if there's going to be an element of, before we tap into that era, put a bow on the others.
Right. And I think...
That's where I'm at with him.
I think you're definitely going to get 2. I think Nolan's going to go in. I think Paul Holmgren's going to go in. Because I just know how it works.
Okay.
Not saying that's who I would vote for. I'm just saying that's how it's going to work.
Okay. I think Paul Holmgren is going to go in as well because of the fact, for 2 reasons. First of all, the overall involvement he has, 4 decades worth of time with the Flyers.
Fair enough.
In every single role you can have, from player to coach to management to senior advisor to just being there.
All he didn't do was wash the towels.
Kind of. And
he might have done that one day.
And literally, we're doing this show on the heels of the announcement that he is also going to be inducted into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame.
Fair enough.
I think that the stars are aligning for everybody to sit there and go, this is a year where they honor Paul Holmgren in terms of U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, Flyers Hall of Fame. You've dedicated your entire life almost, as from being a younger, when you played, to now still being around this team. You're going in.
So is this an attempt to convince him to ride off into the sunset and finally retire and get away from this team?
He already is semi-retired. I really, personally, I'm not kidding when I say this, I do not get why people get so frustrated about what his current association with the team is.
No, I know. It's all residual from his tenure as GM.
I get that. And that's why I sit there and go, listen, younger fans and people who haven't been watching this team as long have their thoughts about him as a general manager, and I get that. But whether he was a great, whether he was...
But his service to the team is unmatched.
Right. It doesn't matter if he wasn't, it doesn't matter that on those teams he wasn't the best player on the team or wasn't the best coach in franchise history or any of that. It doesn't matter. Because over the course of time, he literally, from the time he stepped on the ice wearing the jersey for the first time, almost in the entire time since, almost never stepped away from the franchise. I think there was like a year.
Oh, right.
Where he was not part of the franchise and then was right back. Like, how many people do that, especially in this type of a business where change just consistently happens? Yep,
that's fair.
So for him to go through that and to work through that, to go not just go from being a player, coach, and then he was a GM too. No, he rose through the ranks to GM as an assistant, as a scout, player development. Like, you can only wear so many hats before you are just told you're one of the greatest people in the organization.
You just get there on pure volume.
Right.
But so I think
I will say, so Holmgren, the stars are aligning for Holmgren, I think. And I do think I think there is enough of a campaign, I'll call it, for Lou Nolan because of his longevity as well.
Yeah, now, again, if he doesn't get in, I think everyone's going to be very upset.
Now, if that's the case, then I would tell you that my third should be Bob Kelly.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you have an opportunity. They might just do Bob Kelly and kind of close off the Bullies. I know you kind of mentioned earlier, just put a capstone on the old era. But I think you're going to get a little bit of a vote split on that, and you're going to get enough people going for the newer generation. So I think you're going to get Nolan, you're going to get Holmgren, and then I think you're going to get one of either Gagne or Recchi.
I think there's a hold on it, though. I really think that what you do is...
You might be right about that.
Look, and the reason I say it is because all 3 of those names, Holmgren, Kelly, and Nolan, all 3 of them, they almost fit the bill of like everybody who's sitting there. Like you almost go, they're not in yet.
Right.
Like how are they not in? I mean, Bob Kelly in his career, by the way, only scored a cup clinching goal. And then on top of it, on top of being the exact type of player that the city loves, because he would do everything. He hit people. He fought people. He could score sometimes. You know, he has one of the biggest goals in franchise history.
Yep.
And then on top of it, he is a community staple.
I was going to say, he's been a team ambassador for 30 years.
I mean, I believe I've told you away from the show. I've been able to meet him several times, have conversations with him. I also have done the same with Lou Nolan, by the way. And they are both incredibly kind people, very, you know, just exactly what you expect from people who are in that type of hockey community that love and respect the game, love and respect the fans, love being men of the people. And that they belong in this thing.
Absolutely.
And then do I view Paul Holmgren the same way? No. But I say as a man of the people, he was always so busy in his roles. I don't think he was going around shaking hands.
He's a little more on the Bob Clark side of things,
right? But at the same time, longevity matters. I mean, longevity matters for Bob Clark in the same way, does it not? Like,
no, it sure does.
I would now when I even saw that they were doing this, as much as these weren't the first, like honestly, none of these three were the first names that immediately popped into my head at first, because now I thought player first, obviously, so that's why. Like, and even though Holmgren and Bob Kelly, they were players.
Yeah, I don't know how Lou Nolan's not in.
They were not they weren't star players. Let's just say it like that. I suppose
they're not being inducted because of their playing career.
Right. Exactly. But I think exactly. So I looked at it and I went, how is Mark Recchi not in this Flyers Hall of Fame when he's a hockey Hall of Famer?
How many games did Mark Recchi have with the Flyers?
I'll find it for you because I'm sure I wrote it down.
Okay. Because I think that's probably your big limiting factor, is he spent so much time elsewhere. You know, like, does Chris Pronger deserve a spot because he played his last couple of years here But I think that's kind of how people look at it, even though Mark Recchi had more productive years than Chris Pronger did.
And I disagree with that thought, because Mark Recchi played 602 games here.
Okay.
And I know, and here's why I disagree with it. I understand why people are torn on Mark Recchi, because when your biggest career successes come in Pittsburgh and in Carolina and in Boston, here's the funny part. He played 20 games in Carolina before that playoff run.
That's it?
Then won a cup and left. I'm not kidding.
Love it.
Well, it's not even that he left. You know what it is? He was playing for Pittsburgh at a time when Pittsburgh wasn't that good yet.
Right.
Got traded to Carolina for the playoff run, and then later had the same thing happen eventually when he went to Boston.
Yep. You
know what I mean? Like, it just worked out that way, that they gave him chances to win another cup, and he did.
Man, he was a monster in Boston.
And I understand the career successes were not there in Philadelphia like that. Like they
and weren't. I think that's the thing.
The problem I have with that argument is I'm sorry, a guy who put up 232 goals and 627 points in 602 games.
Fair enough.
And not only that, but who spent more time in with this particular team than any other team in his career. I know he bounced around and he won cups with other teams. I get it. But he never had the longevity with even some of those other teams that he had in Philadelphia, even with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I thought he was closer to the 400 game mark. I didn't realize he played that many. Wow. Okay.
That's why I think he belongs in, because to me, it's okay. Another sport comparison, ironically. Okay, it's a football Sunday, and we make two baseball references in this podcast. What's going on? It's the Cooperstown hat on the plaque argument.
Right.
Because you go, well, which team do you identify them with the most when they go into the overall Hall of Fame for the entire sport?
Right.
And certain like that's the thing. It's not Chris Pronger, because for Chris Pronger, I'm gonna think of him as a Blue.
Yeah.
St. Louis is where I think of him first.
That's fair.
And then I think of him in Anaheim. Probably.
I was going to say Anaheim is up there for me.
Anaheim, he does not have the longevity, though. His biggest success overall came in Anaheim. I agree. But he also
No,
never
you
made,
said identifiable. You didn't necessarily say longevity. If winning a cup makes you more identifiable, if that's more memorable.
I go by longevity as much, though, because I sit there and I think about what made you a name in the league. Like, by the time Pronger won a cup in Anaheim, he was already a long-time all-star player.
Okay, fair enough.
And had also, by the way, had his shot to win a cup with Edmonton, which was a very short-lived thing anyway, but still, like, but there you go. Like, what if he didn't stay in Edmonton and they won the cup?
Right.
Do we identify with him as an Edmonton Oiler for one season because he won a cup there, or do we sit there and go, well, your bigger successes were like I don't identify Mark Recchi as a Carolina Hurricane. I'm sorry.
No, that's fair.
I don't. I know he won a cup there. I don't.
No, that's fair.
In the same way that I don't I wouldn't identify him as a Boston Bruin first.
No, I would either go Flyer or probably Canadian.
Actually, well, Pittsburgh has an argument too because he started his career in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but that's unpleasant to think about, so I just don't think about it.
I know, but he probably that's the next closest though. But
yeah, but it's unpleasant, so I don't think about it.
Fine, then you don't think about it. But okay, so fine, dude. Put the shoe on the other foot then. Simone Gagne won a cup in L.A. Do you identify him as a king first?
No.
Okay, so he played 11 years here, and because he had much shorter time there, but his greatest success came out there.
Well, sure, but Chris Pronger wasn't in St. Louis for 11 years.
That's not. No, I'm not talking about for that though. But I'm saying, Mark Recchi played 10 years in Philadelphia though.
Wow, that's crazy to think about.
Just because his greatest success did not happen here, you don't identify with him because he didn't win cups here. Okay, so Gagne didn't either.
Right.
And Gagne,
I agree.
And Gagne could have won two. Like Gagne won one with the Kings and then could have won one with Boston.
You identify Jeff Carter as a king though, right?
Yes.
Okay. How about Mike Richards?
Probably more so because he was on both of those teams, but yeah, like it's much closer with Richards because he was a captain here. That's the tough part.
Right. That's fair.
Carter, I think, became something even more than what he was in Philadelphia when he got to LA.
You're not wrong.
Richards did not have nearly as long of a shelf life after those cup years, and that's a big difference.
After that, they identified him as a suspect.
Well, yeah, I hear you. So I look at it and I go, to me, as a Hockey Hall of Famer, Mark Recchi is a flyer. That's me. I understand people who have the argument for other teams. He did start his career in Pittsburgh. He had that long stretch in Montreal. I get it. I think he's a flyer. And I don't know how, in the very least, to me anyway, somebody who played with the franchise for that long, I don't know how, when you are rolling out the red carpet for guys who get inducted into the Hall of Fame and then get their number retired,
right?
How at least he's not in your team Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
I can understand the argument for, okay, listen, first of all, there's two things with Recchi's number. Number one, it's actually identifiable in this franchise for two people. Okay. Because you could sit there and say, number 8, it's Mark Recchi. No, number 8's Dave Schultz. You could make that argument, and it's not like it hasn't been, like, now, even though...
And if they ever retire the number, I think they retire it for Dave Schultz.
I think you could also pull a New York Rangers or some of these other teams and go, it's two people.
That's fair.
I mean, there's no reason why you can't. I think the numbers they have retired have been so very clearly identifiable with one person.
I think they would hesitate to.
Now, granted, I mean, look, Mark Howe finally got his number retired a few years back, and yet that number was in circulation and worn by multiple players for many years.
Right.
It doesn't mean it makes them more identifiable. But,
that's fair.
But I just don't know how I just don't know how a guy makes the Hockey Hall of Fame, even if you have the argument for, his number should be retired. Like, I get that argument. I don't know how he's not in your team Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think Mark Recchi should probably be in, and I think between him and Gagne, I think he is the pick. So I think you see Holmgren, you see Nolan, and then 50-50 Recchi or Kelly.
Oh, and for what it's worth, by the way, and I did write it down. So Recchi also ranks 6th in franchise history in assists and 9th in points.
Phew.
And I just want to clarify for people who may not know what the list of all-time points are in Flyers history. There are only 3 players in the top 10 who are not in the Flyers Hall of Fame, and 2 of them are active players. I'll give you a guess of who the active players are. One of them is still with the team, and one of them just got traded.
Oh, so it's Claude and Jake, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
But my point being, let's put it this way, if they turn around...
Mark Recchi's the only other one not in. right? Like that's it. He's the only one there who's not playing and not in. Fix it.
Okay, and I'm not saying this is definitively going to happen because obviously there's a voting process and all that stuff like that. But if you are going to get frustrated, potentially, or if you sit there and you are frustrated by the idea that you go, Recky's not a Hall of Fame, like a Flyers Hall of Famer. Come on, right? Like if that's your argument, then you're going to be infuriated in a few years when Voracek is considered for something like this. You know what I mean? Man. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying.
I just thought about the reaction of certain people hearing Jake Voracek, right. Flyers Hall of Famer.
Well, okay, and now listen, for what it's worth, by the way, if you associate, like, this is another argument that I would make for Recchi as well. Okay, maybe you don't associate him as a Flyer first. You think of his past successes, whatever. Now, at the same time, I watched a very large contingency of people who were maybe some, I don't want to call it complete outrage, but somewhat outraged by the fact that, oh, come on, how is Danny Briere not a finalist for this? And I understand the argument for his case down the road, but I'm sitting here going, there's nothing different about his case than Recchi's case, in my opinion. Like, he had just as much success with another franchise as he did here, and yes, he's a really well-liked part of this franchise.
He's a Sabre to me.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying, like, there's no rhyme or reason. Like, he's as much of a Sabre as he is a Flyer from the years standpoint.
Right.
And quite frankly, doesn't even come close to having the numbers over the 8 years he played in Philly that he did in Buffalo.
He was obscene in Buffalo.
Or, I mean, it might have been fewer than 8 years. I'm thinking 8 years because of Timonen. You know, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking Timonen because Timonen's going to eventually probably make his way onto a finalist list down the road as well. But
man, I don't know. That one's tough for me.
But this is why I'm saying I feel like you need to put the bow on the Bullies essentially, and then make your way back into, well, Recchi was a late '80s player who came to the Flyers in the early '90s, had some big success with them in the early 2000s. You can do Tocchet for the same reason, and Gagne kind of qualifies in that as well because Gagne was a late '90s, mostly 2000s kind of player. And you're going to once you induct Gagne, which is going to happen at some point, because Gagne also qualifies as one of the
fact that he's a finalist on this list.
Well, but Gagne is also a top 10 goal scorer in franchise history, and actually, I believe somebody was coming. I forget if somebody was coming up on his heels really quickly. Maybe it wasn't. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking of Voracek was hot on the heels of Recchi for 9th in franchise history in points until the trade happened, and now.
Whoops.
So now Recchi's solidified for a while in 9th.
Right.
Make him one of these Hall of Famers. And Gagne's in the top 10 in goals in franchise history, I believe. So, like, you've got, like, but Gagne's going to usher in a new era of inductees to this list, whether it's Briere and Timonen, whether it's, you know, when Giroux's time comes, whether there's anybody else that we're not thinking of that should go in, but I don't think that you should just start that now with 5 other players from an era before Gagne. That
let me throw a name. Let me throw a name out for you from this era.
Okay.
And you just hit me with a quick gut reaction. Flyers Hall of Fame, yes or no?
Oh, why do I have a bad feeling about this?
Keith Primo. Ooh, the hesitation. I love it.
No, but I get why you're saying it because I did see people who said stuff about it.
I'm just curious.
Okay, look. There's always a special place in the hearts of Flyers fans for a captain.
Fair.
I respect that. In a weird sort of way, and Primo played here longer. I'm not going to sit here and deny that, but in a weird sort of way, I feel like the Keith Primo argument is not that different from like arguing that Jeremy Roenick should be in there. when Roenick had because as a player who had a very solid overall career, but I feel like their time with the team was not as long as people think.
I think that's fair to say.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Danny Briere probably has more of a case than Keith Primo does.
Yeah, I just don't know if you want to go into the late 2000s quite yet. You're starting to get a little recent, right? You know what I mean? The
problem is that the players who ultimately defined the early 2000s years that you're trying to talk about are also the ones that are going to usher in the 2010s because Gagne was still playing at that time too.
That's valid.
And Recchi was a big part of those. Recchi is a big part of those teams. Recchi is as much of a part of the 2000 and 2004 teams as he is. His Flyers career started in the early 90s. He's as much that 4-year span, 5-year span before he went on to win 2 more cups and cap off his career, riding off into the sunset like that.
Yeah, remember how good he was in the 2010 Boston series?
I mean, let's put it this way: you're bringing up Keith Primo's name. Primo was outstanding in 04.
He was.
And, and let's put it this way, yes, okay, Recchi was great in 2010. So was Briere. Briere was outstanding.
Briere was incredible. We have 30 points in that run.
Exactly. So, like...
Yeah, they're going to get in. Like, both of them.
The thing is that Briere's regular season numbers are actually not nearly as impressive as you think. I think the reason people think of him in this regard is because he's Mr. Playoffs.
Mr. Playoffs.
I mean, I suppose next you're going to tell me what's Ilya Brizgalov doing, or whatever. Like, I'm just let's be realistic about people who deserve their names and that kind of stature. And that's the thing. Even down to they had
Steve Mason.
That's fun. Steve Mason gets a bad reputation.
I know he does. That being said, I don't know if anybody who played for the team between 2012 and 2016, other than Claude Giroux and Sean Couturier, have a chance of getting in.
But think about the best players from even those teams as you start to approach 2010 and whatnot. Chris Pronger didn't play here long enough.
No.
Peter Forsberg didn't play here long enough.
No, he wasn't good. He wasn't.
He was good early in that.
He was. You're right.
Believe it or not, actually, that entire first season.
That injury tore him up, though.
That injury destroyed him.
It ended his career.
But what I'm trying to get at is that you had a bunch of guys who had really good years here, but it was not nearly as long. Like honestly, you're almost right. The next discussion that you kind of usher in with that grouping with
Scott Hartnell.
Scott Hartnell might actually have an argument though, because he was here for a long time. You're going to get into the Jeff Carter, Mike Richards discussion.
Right, you're into it. You're into that era, and
they are probably the next 2 players that actually define that section of time.
Oh man,
it's
gonna be a fun conversation when it comes up. I can't wait.
But I think you can prolong or even bypass a decent amount of those years with guys who you're not terribly sure about. With okay, we're gonna do the last of the bullies right now, and then next year, here comes Recchi and maybe Gagne, do Tocchet. I think they're all deserving in that regard because eventually you're going to get to, Danny Briere probably should go in, or Kimmo Timonen's going to go in because, and what you need to start to realize with that type of stuff is what are their ties currently. Danny Briere has ties currently with everything with Maine, and he's helped coach at development camps, and he does stuff with the alumni, and he's still in the area, and Timonen's the same kind of way, and you start to get into guys like that.
You start to get into the community staple kind of guys. Yep.
Right. You start to get into those kind of guys, and if that's the case, they're the type of guys who are probably going to go in the same way that you're going to put Paul Holmgren in for his longevity. You're going to put Bob Kelly in for that kind of stuff probably. These are names that you go, they should have already been in, and now you're just probably doubling down on it because of their service to the franchise as much as anything.
But as we kind of come to a close and put a cap on this, the most important thing, and don't you ever forget it, is Lou Nolan deserves to be in. I
really think he's got a heavy campaign this year for this because of the fact that there's a lot of people. Let's put it this way: media members, I think anyway, the media members who have already put out, it's great to see him get the nomination. I think they're going to give him, I think he's going to get votes for the reason of we know how fans react to Lou Nolan, and I don't know if you remember this. A couple seasons ago, there was a late February, early March-ish. There was a 4-game stretch where he was not there.
Yes.
And it was a question every game.
Yes.
He misses one. You go, all right. He
took a night off.
He's usually due to miss one every year.
Yeah.
Okay. But then it was 2 and 3 and 4 and
it became a concern.
Literally, people went, "Is everything?
Where's Lou?
Where's Lou?
Yep.
Everything
Where's
good?"
Is Lou okay?
Yeah. That's how important his voice is to people who go into that building.
Oh yeah.
And there's going to be to be honest with you, I almost wonder what it's going to be like if he does get inducted at least this time around, or what eventually when he does, because you're also always the MC of these things. You set
who's going to host it?
You set the stage for it. We're going to have to grab what we're going to have to do is you're going to probably have to grab Jim Jackson to go and host it because he's the broadcaster. so you can induct the public address announcer.
We'll just bring Pat Croce back to host it.
Oh,
that'll go well. That'll just go perfectly. Nothing could possibly go wrong. That's a name you haven't heard in a minute. Come on, when's the last time you got a good Pat Croce reference?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good way to finish it off, I would suppose. Let's put this last banner up there because this is what I've been like. This is what the story says anyway.
Yeah.
For now, or this is what the idea is. It hasn't been officially announced, but we believe that this is. There have been reports that this is when training camp is going to begin. So that means by the time we do another show, camp is underway.
I was going to say this kind of ties nicely into our schedule for future shows. So
yeah, because you know what's going to happen? I'm going to have seen potential line combinations by the time we do another show. So we actually can talk about what the real, possibilities are for this team in a lot of ways. And we'll be, by the time we do that show, we'll probably be we're right on the cusp of the preseason at that point. So we'll also be talking about that. We're going to be right there, and it's going to be great.
So, quick little schedule update if you got this far. We will still be taking next week off, but then the week after that, if they're in training camp, we might be every week. We're still kind of playing it by ear, but...
I think we're going to be every week because it's not just the fact that they're going to be back in camp at that point, but it's...
Preseason games start shortly thereafter.
It is. We're going to do a show. Camp is going on. Preseason is 2 days away, and from there, it's going to build into... There's preseason games to talk about the following week, and then more to talk about, and then we're rolling with the regular season.
We're back
right away, and it's gonna be great, and we will definitely have to kind of consider some things with the schedule down the road. Early on, there's not really much of an issue, but there will be some Sunday games down the stretch, and some of the scheduling to me, I don't know how we haven't really talked about the schedule. Maybe we'll do that on the next show too, as we touch on camp. And
absolutely.
But some of the schedule has some obscure times on it. Although actually they just changed one of them not long ago. There was an update on one of them. There was a road game on a Sunday. It was supposed to start 5, and now it's 7, which makes a whole lot more sense. But stuff like that. So I'm wondering if, just if some of these, we'll talk about some of these scheduling things, and there's some different times on there and some things like that. And certainly, because I think one of the things I want to write about down the road, especially over the course of the next 2 weeks, is some of the games to look forward to on the schedule, which would certainly be a talking point on our next show.
Absolutely.
There's going to be multiple to think about. And I honestly think that a lot of them come early on, to be honest, because I think we've already hinted at it a little bit. The home openers on a Friday night, that's already fun to begin with, and then or home opener / season opener. I'm sorry, because it's both. It doesn't always happen that way, but this time around it does. And then the newest team in the NHL comes into town right away, and it's
that's going to be exciting.
It's going to be exciting. Exactly, it's going to be really exciting, and that's going to be cool. And then I can only assume that maybe in another week or two we probably get an update on the conversation we just had, and I think maybe that class is announced. And they have a night in mind that they want to have this ceremony on.
Yeah, I think we'll see it pop up on the schedule.
Well, they did. I will say this: they did it very quickly. From a week of we're gonna get together a list of nominees, and we're planning to induct at least one person, maybe more. And then in a week, they went, "Here are 6 finalists." And
right.
It's I wouldn't honestly. The Monday or Tuesday news drop that we fully expect.
Oh yeah,
it's probably coming soon.
Well, and you know what? We will be back in 2 weeks to talk about it. We are taking one more week off for the summer, and then we're going to be back pretty much every week until the wheels fall off. So
yeah.
So in the meantime, make sure to follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Make sure to follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. You can find the show everywhere you find podcasts: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, Podbean, SportsTalkPhilly.com. Kevin's articles are ramping back up. We're getting back towards the season.
I think I said that. I forget what it was and where I said this about, but development camp was over the course of a couple weeks ago. We were on Zoom calls with interviews every day for 4 days in a row or 3 days in a row or something like that. Yeah, I started to get the itch after that. I'm like, okay, we're back.
We're back, baby.
It's getting closer, and I'm starting to because one of the things it is too is we've been talking every time we've done another show every other week. It's let's talk about what we think they could be. We're going to finally get to see it soon enough.
What they are.
We're not there, and that's what's really exciting. When we do this next show in 2 weeks, then the preseason.
We're going to be days away from the preseason.
Right, the preseason starts in 2 days, and it's here's going to be your first. And it's not like we said earlier in the show. It's not going to be your first like the first look, or the first true look at the team because there's not
Right.
everybody, but like it'll be
It's
nice.
something. It's hockey.
Exactly. It's going to be nice to see what some of these players have. So let's get excited for it for sure.
Oh,
we're coming in, we're about to get it started. And on a day when another season starts too, because I'm sure a lot of people out there are amped up for football too.
Yep, absolutely. But, all right, we're getting out of here. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Tell your friends. You would think. Weekly. 2 weeks. Be here. See ya.